Hi, I'm Gavin with Haverstick Designs, and welcome back to the Sound Project. So I have the pleasure of sitting down with Dave Morrison from IsoAcoustics. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Gavin. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and sitting down with us a little bit. And we've been involved in a lot of projects together. Like when we use IsoAcoustics isolators in a lot of our jobs. But maybe start off with letting the audience know a little bit more about you and how you got into the position you're in now.
Yeah, I worked for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation for 20 years. And I worked in the design and construction of radio and television studios. And in fact, I had a senior role on the Broadcast Center in Toronto, the largest. It was the center of the English network. And when it was finished, it was the world's largest multimedia facility. And besides all the floating floors and all the other technical stuff, the entire building was mounted on 3,000 isolators. And the reason for that was to mitigate the terrestrial noise coming into the building.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this for some time. I left the CBC and went in a different direction, but I'd always continued to play with this. I was always very fascinated with that boundary between a speaker and the supporting surface, and I started building my own little pieces and stuff back and forth. And eventually I came up with some ideas, and I went to the National Research Council in Ottawa to do some testing, and I found I could patent it, and we found it made a big difference. And in 2012, we attended our first NAMM with one SKU, the Isolator 155, and that was really the start of it there.
Yeah.
I think we currently have about 125 products overall, and we're dealing with both Pro and Home.
Yeah. What year was that? Was the first NAMM for you?
2012.
2012. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been coming to the NAMM show since probably 2001 was my first one, and I took about a 10-year break.
Yes.
Whereas it's like after I was head of engineering at Orlex Acoustics for a while, and came every year for that. And then when I started my business, I was like, I'm gonna not go to NAMM for a few years. But it's fun to be back and to do this thing. And, so with IsoAcoustics, I mean. Obviously, you guys have expanded a lot since 2012 from one SKU to what you have now. I mean, like I said, we utilize a lot of your products in our designs because it's just, they work. You know, they do a great job, whether or not it's isolating like a freestanding speaker or if it's a soffit-mounted condition that we work together on. But I guess when it comes to the products that you're designing, I'm sure that it's all based on customer need and what you see out in the industry?
Yeah, they're just different applications. I mean, the concept is always the same. We're always just trying to keep the whole system in equilibrium. We're trying to, with the multi-part, we aren't limited by the performance of a particular element.
Right.
And so our goal is to try to be effective across the whole audio spectrum. We're not trying to be the lowest industrial isolator. We're not trying to chase the very bottom end and resonant frequency. We're looking for something that's optimized for the audio industry, and that's really the heart of it. So, you know, whether we're looking for something like the ISO series with height and tilt, or we're looking for something that's the minimum rise but has that effectivity, that's really our goal. Yeah.
And like I said, we've used them in a lot of applications. Probably most recently, we've had quite a few projects with soffit-mounted speakers, like large Genelec speakers or ATC or different things like that. And, you know, we always stress the importance of like this whole thing doesn't work unless you isolate the speaker properly. I mean, you could build the best soffit wall in the world, but if the speaker is coupled physically with it, you're going to have issues. So.
Absolutely. You've got a live element. And you've got it in an enclosure. You've got it there's a boundary.
Yeah.
And there's always that interaction between the boundary.
Yeah. And then, I mean, obviously, the first SKUs, were they the kind of standalone at once? I mean, those have been great. I mean, I've been talking about them a lot ever since they came out. And, you know, I know that you have like a way to size it on your website about depending on which speaker you have, you know, because that's all important is the size and weight of the speaker and how it interacts with it.
Exactly.
And so I think that making that easy for the client to get the right information, you've done all the research and you can point them in the right direction. I think that's great.
Yeah. Well, when you offer so many options, options, you open the door to a lot of confusion, and everything's got an empirical curve, so you want it to fit within the right part of the curve. So that's where the calculator has become important.
Yeah,
and it has, I think it's like 5,000 makes and models in there now to help people make the decision, and it's got some logic.
Yeah,
if there's something that isn't explicitly in the database.
Sure. How many of your projects is it mostly recording studio and broadcast and those sort of applications, or what other industries are you working in?
Well, the two major ones are pro and home.
Yeah.
So on the home side, we've that's grown very large. I mean, it's actually a bigger industry than pro. Mm-hmm. And so we make products for different applications, turntables, the amplifiers, the DACs, the speakers, and so on. So that really has become the bigger part of the coin. The game was always to get into the home, but the pro was the easier one for me to start with because I started in the broadcast side,
right?
And I could gain momentum with the engineers and that. Mm-hmm. And everything's black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Everything's simple.
Yeah,
that was easy. That was easy door to enter. Mm-hmm. But the goal was always to try to expand and go anywhere in the audio.
Yeah, and do you find that working in those two industries that you have to educate people in a different way?
Completely different.
Completely different. Which one's easier, pro audio or the home?
Oh, that's a good question. We see them as two different families.
Okay.
So we speak two different languages.
Right.
And the products are designed completely different. On the home side, the aesthetic is very important. Mm-hmm. People want it to look right and so on. And there's a lot of concern about snake oil and there's this old paradigm that people work from that we have to educate them to get them thinking a different way. The pro people are more they see it more as a tool.
Yeah.
And they're more open to something new. And if they can hear it and if it means something to them, they're much faster to gravitate to it. But don't get it all fancy and funny because people don't want to spend a lot of money.
Yeah, that is something that I've seen too in like with my background and some product design in there. Having one product that worked fine in the pro market, but then you take it over to consumer or the home market, and they're just like, I don't like the way that thing looks. I don't care how it sounds. I really want it to look a certain way, and that goes for, we do some home theaters every once in a while as well, and it's tough to find the clients that really want to go down that rabbit hole of making this room sound the best that it can, because a lot of times just 1-inch thick treatment on the walls and they're like, oh, it looks like a theater, and they don't care as much about how it sounds. But it's like it's all, every little bit of that project, the room, the acoustics, the speakers, and then how the speakers are mounted are all really important.
Yes.
One of the things that newish product that you have is the mounts that you have for. We use them in our immersive audio Atmos setups, where you have those mounts that can suspend height channel speakers or off the wall. Those I just think was a brilliant choice, because that's where everybody was moving, is towards these immersive setups, and it causes a problem because so many people have a room that's already built and they don't. They're just throwing up speakers and bolting them directly to a structure, and then isolation gets a little funky. So I think that was a great idea that you had to do that.
Yeah.
Are you guys selling a lot of those units right now with the boon of
it's ramping up. You could see that there's a lot more, even in NAMM today, there's a lot more conversation around the Atmos or the immersive sound side, and you could feel that that's growing. A lot of the engineers are talking about just how they're dealing with large catalogs and so on now, and going through it. So it's definitely growing.
Yeah. I mean, when I first saw that, I think it was at maybe it was last NAMM that I saw that for the first time, or maybe 2 NAMMs ago. I can't remember. Yeah. But it was definitely something that was eye-opening. Like, thank you for having a solution that allows us to put speakers in places that they weren't first intended to be, without coupling it with the overall room. So
and trying to build a system too that's simple to install, because people don't want to have 4 people on a ladder trying to screw things together. It's got to be intuitive. It's got to go together easily.
Yeah.
But if you understand what's happening when you put a speaker on a floor, on a console, on a meter bridge, and just the kind of activity that goes on in that boundary, it's maybe even greater in a wall or on a ceiling.
Sure.
The cavities, the structure, the density. you're dealing with a lot of unknowns there. So anything you do to mitigate that pays dividends as well.
Yeah, and it's something that I think a lot of people just don't think about intuitively. Because with so many people going towards an Atmos system, you'll say like, well, I'll just mount a bracket up there and I'll just bolt it into the ceiling.
Get it up.
Yeah, just get it up there.
I need it here.
I need it here, and I've got projects and I need to get moving.
Yeah.
So I'm always, educating people on that and just saying, it's really important to make sure this is decoupled so you're not creating some sort of other resonance issue in your space that you could avoid.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what kind of things are you showing? Anything new at the NAMM show or things that you're excited about moving forward?
To be honest, this year we're not really showing anything new. We've got some things that are in the pipe, but this year we've got the V120 stuff on a rack. We've got some things that we're showing. We've got the pucks, the ISO series, and so on.
Yeah.
But
I always appreciate the help with when we're doing projects and we shoot you an email real quick and say like, hey, we got this situation. We got these speakers going in this type of wall. Which one of your products would you recommend? And as an engineer, like I'm a mechanical engineer by degree, and I know how important it is to size things properly with that spring mass system. And it's just great to have a resource to be able to like, hey, which you know your products better than we ever will. So I always appreciate the help when we reach out.
Yeah, thanks. We're always pleased to see a letter from you. So always ready to jump in.
Yeah. Do you work in the two different industries? Is there one that you prefer working in? Like, is it something where you just find more joy out of doing the home versus pro or anything like that?
I guess the home really is kind of more vibrant right now. We're working with 70 manufacturers to build our stuff into their speakers. Sonus Faber launched a product last January, a year ago, at CES, and it's $750,000. Wow. And they had an interesting challenge. They contacted us. They wanted to isolate the speaker cabinet from the base plate.
Okay.
Instead of being between the base plate and the floor.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we call it the Gaia capsule, and it goes up into the speaker. And then there's a M10 bolt that goes through the base plate to attach the base plate to our isolators. Okay. But things like that are kind of interesting, exciting. So, and we're always playing with new things. We'll be launching some things in this year at Exponent in Munich.
Okay.
For the hi-fi. So we've got a whole range of products that are coming out from that.
Do you get contacted a lot by manufacturers like that just as an interesting challenge? And I'm sure that's fun to be able to re-envision the things you already have. Like, let's try to reposition this into something else.
Well, it's kind of working both ways. We talk to them when we see something and we tell them what we could do. But it's exciting when we get contacted and they say, we've got this issue, we've got this problem, we want to. And I think our name is getting coming forward enough that people are seeing the value. Yeah. And oftentimes, like, we'll rebrand it to whatever they want. We'll work with them to make it aesthetically work with their product. But many manufacturers are very pleased to see the IsoAcoustics name on it. Yeah. And capitalize on that. If they're making the effort to move from the spikes, why not hold your hand up and say you're there, right?
I think it's great. And I'm really curious too, as a manufacturer, like obviously as in your R&D and development, I'm sure testing is such a big part of what you guys are doing. Do you find that is hard to relay to the average customer, that testing type of data, or is it something that you use more internally to help make decisions?
It's really a tool for us to kind of optimize what we're doing. Yeah. And so we try to educate people. In the early days, we didn't say a lot about what we were doing. We were afraid of exposing too much. Sure. And now over time, we've gotten a lot more comfortable and we're quicker to talk about how things are working or why they're doing what they do.
Nice. So with those two main markets that you work in, is there any other markets that you're going after, or is it something that you're looking to expand in any way?
Well, we've got some products for the live stage and for the MI side, for guitar amps and things like that. But our goal isn't really too much. It isn't to move too much from the audio world itself. So anything that's kind of consumer audio, that's really where we'll stay focused, I think.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about just some of the principles involved in the design of these products and why they're needed.
Yeah. One thing we've been talking about more with people is how they're actually working and what they do. And I think everybody appreciates, their first thought is that a speaker will excite the surface. You could have dissonant sounds and all sorts of distortion that coming off of that surface. The second thing is the structure-borne noise that causes issues within the space and upsets the neighbors and so on. People understand those ones, and that's usually foremost in their mind. But the really exciting one is that when the energy is actually hitting that boundaries, hitting that supporting surface, and it reflects back up, it's coming back up into the speaker, and any artifacts that are similar in both channels, we perceive them to be in the middle.
Yeah.
And it collapses the soundstage. So, or the phantom image, if you like.
Yeah.
And so what startles people the most when they hear our demo is just how the soundstage changes.
Sure.
And, they'll get the idea about the bass is tighter, the bass is boomy or whatever. But when they hear that image change, they can't put their finger on it.
Sure.
And they think it's voodoo or they think something's wrong. And it's really a function of these artifacts coming back and forth.
I've always had fun with that when we recommend these isolators for people and then they hear it for the first time and really clicks like, oh, this is why I'm doing this.
Yes.
It's because it is a hard thing to just tell someone, hey, it's really important to isolate your speakers. And they may intuitively think like, well, of course that's the case, but they can't relate to what's that mean in the real world as far as what's this going to sound like. And then you see their eyes light up and just like, wow, I didn't know that it could be this much better.
Yeah, and people inevitably think isolation is just the bottom end.
Right.
And in fact, it goes all the way up, whether it's masking to some extent or whether it's really that just articulation higher up with that accuracy. It's startling. But again, the image is a big part of the whole experience.
Yeah.
It's the emotional part of the experience.
Right.
And if you can make that more open, transparent, and more lifelike, it's quite profound.
I try to always tell people that, speaker manufacturers are designing their products in anechoic chambers where it's suspended in the middle of the room. And then suddenly you're placing that speaker anywhere. Like sometimes it's on a filing cabinet or it's on a shelf or a desk that everything has a resonant frequency. Everything is going to impact that relationship. And so the importance of these isolators is, can't be minimized.
No, that's absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Dave, so much for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedule and look forward to working with you on a lot of projects in the future.
Thank you, Gavin. It's always a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, that's been another episode of the S.O.U.N.D Project. Thanks for being a part of it. I'm curious if you have any experience with IsoAcoustics products and what kind of impact that had on your setup. Please comment that below, and we'll see you next week.